It's Wednesday, June 29th, and welcome to this week's edition of CT Pulse on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Czaplinski, back with Josh Fisher. It's been a couple weeks, Josh, since we've both been here.
Welcome back, Kate.
And welcome back to you as well.
Tan. Nice.
I know, I'm a little tan.
I'm
I'm hoping it doesn't go away. We'll see what happens. But Josh, we have a lot to talk about today. We have a special guest, our first returning guest,
yes.
State Representative John Shaban, who is challenging Jim Himes for his congressional seat. We're going to be talking with him about gun control, his campaign, a lot more that's going on. And we have some other stuff to talk about.
We also have Jim Cameron's talking. We'll talk transportation with us about the quiet cars on Metro North and Amtrak and the troubles they've had getting those going. And Doug Smith, of course, will be stopping by to take a look at the editorial cartoons that will be featured in all the HAN Network papers this week. Right,
and a couple news stories we want to talk about, including a home that just went for sale that has kind of a recent grisly history, just something we're going to discuss there, and an alligator scare in Connecticut. We'll talk more about that. But
you didn't bring any of those back from your vacation?
No, I didn't. No, there were no alligators in where I was in Arizona. But anyway, all right, we are going to get to our special guest. As we said, State Representative John Shaban just released a new campaign video. Let's check that out first before we bring him on.
A lot of folks run for different offices and they use canned phrases like, you know, outsider and whatnot. And am I an outsider? I don't know. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a local lawyer, I'm a football coach. Other than raising my kids, coaching youth football is the most important thing that I do. You have the ability to make connections with kids, to teach them about life. We are taking young boys and young girls and teaching them how to work hard, how to win, how to lose, how to be respectful to each other, how to work as a team, because that's frankly what we need in our country and in our world is to have kids and have adults, frankly, know how to work with each other. I've been involved in local government for years because I'm just trying to help. So if that makes me an insider or an outsider, I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. But what I do know is that the folks that we have representing us in Washington right now are not doing a good job for us. That we have surrendered our power, our authority, our money, and our ability to solve our own problems year after year after year. Our entire federal delegation isn't even in the room when the folks who decide how much of our own money we get back is being decided. So we need someone who has a better focus on what's happening here on the ground in Fairfield County and the state of Connecticut, and someone who can actually speak to the folks, whatever party they're in, about returning some authority and funding and resources back to the states, because frankly that's where it started. The federal government is not the owner of Connecticut. Connecticut is the owner of the federal government, and that's the way we have to approach these problems.
So, John, that video obviously has this football theme, team player theme going in it in this first video that you've released for your campaign commercial. How has your time in the General Assembly what has that taught you about how can we still have team players on both sides working together in politics?
Well, we really can, and you're right. I sort of picked up on it was an introductory video, who I am, you know, father and football coach, and by the way, I'm also a state representative and local lawyer and all that stuff. A lot of folks try and infuse the narrative that you hear from Washington, D.C. on Hartford. Truthfully, 75–80% of the things that get done in Hartford get done on a bipartisan basis. I'm very good friends with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, and if I go to D.C., I intend to be very good friends with my Democratic colleagues down there. It's just when it comes down to where you get the money and how you spend the money is where we tend to part ways, and that's fine. I mean, it is what it is. But the teamwork thing is important, because the way politics has kind of evolved, I think, in the last decade or so, is frankly, it's my Democratic opponents tend to try and divide up the universe into villains and victims. And I don't think that's helpful for the discussion. I like to focus more on teamwork or victories. So that's sort of the model that I've taken to everything I do. Whether it's family life or government life. You try and we're all on the same team. We're Americans. We're Connecticut citizens, and it's time to start acting that way.
What are some of those bipartisan victories that you've achieved in the General Assembly that both sides have worked together for the good of the state?
Well, I've done a lot of work. I'm the head Republican on the Environment Committee. I have an environmental law degree, so it was fun to be able to kind of use what I was trained for up in the Capitol. We've done a lot of good work on brownfields. I actually just had a little press release out recently. One of our brownfield bills got vetoed by the governor's office for technical reasons, and they were valid reasons. And what I try and highlight in there is that the governor's office has been excellent on environmental policy and brownfield redevelopment. My Democratic colleagues have been excellent on environmental policy and brownfield redevelopment, and it's something that I've focused on for years. So we've all been able to kind of work together to get a lot of that pushed in the right direction. And there's been a lot of others. That's just the one that's closest to the top of the list. The concern and what the rub always comes down to is, all right, we can pass all these great policies and pass all these great laws, but if you can't fund them, then it's just words on paper.
Right.
And that's where the dollars in, dollars out discussion comes. And that's where the disagreement comes, because we all want to do essentially the same stuff. It's just how are we going to actually affect those changes to get there. So.
And one of the things you mentioned in a recent op-ed, actually, in response to Jim Himes' response to the Orlando shootings, was you talked about the bipartisan gun bill in the Connecticut General Assembly and some of the things that you all supported in that, including mental health screening, school security funding, but you have talked about some of that since being defunded. Yeah,
and it just goes to my last point. I mean, we spent a lot of time, almost 2.5 years ago, after the tragedy in Sandy Hook, trying to figure out, how we could do things better. And in the initial press on it, or some of the initial bills, was all about device control. And I was among the folks. And listen, I'm a gun owner and a hunter and whatnot, but I was like, I'm willing to talk device controls, but we have to do more than that, because the thing that makes a weapon dangerous is the person holding it, not the weapon itself. So let's focus on the people who are actually getting and using these weapons. So that's why it was essential for me to make sure that we had some mental health programs, mental health screening models put in there, and we did that through some of our probate courts, some tracking through there, and to promote school security, which we did through routing different funding mechanisms that traditionally could only go for certain things in education, that it could be used for school security. So what did we do? We spent months working on this bill. It passed. It was a bipartisan bill. Folks on both sides of the aisle, some yes, some no, but the bill passed. And now what have we done? Because of our poor fiscal policy, we once again see bad public policy. We spent all this time trying to improve the legal structure to try and at least winnow down the chances of bad stuff happening like that again, and we just defunded it because we're out of money, because we don't run our fiscal house in order. So we can pass all the laws we want, but if we can't fund it or make it functional, it's words on paper. And that's, you saw the op-ed you mentioned. I mean, that's really the criticism I have with our guys, our federal contingent and Jim Himes. I think their motives are genuine. I would never question their motives, because this was a tragedy and it's upsetting to everybody. But walking out on a moment of silence and having to sit in, that's great to get in the press release, but for 8 years, Jim's been down there, hasn't done a darn thing about the central ingredient to gun violence in this country, and that's the illegal trafficking of handguns. Now, in those same 8 years, the 6 years I've been in Hartford, I actually have. I mean, one of the things in the big gun bill is we got funding, funded to the illegal gun task force, the trafficking task force, which Connecticut had defunded despite creating it years ago. Well, that funding just got cut. 3 years ago, I actually pitched a bill, my own bill, to amp that funding up by 5-fold, because that is the central ingredient to the gun violence you see. We are losing scores of young kids in our cities, in this state and other states, every week, every month, every year, and for some reason that doesn't get the press because it's spread out over a long period of time. So, we can talk about things that get you in the paper, but if we want to talk about solutions, we have to focus on the issue, and walking out on a moment of silence doesn't do a darn thing.
Yeah, and in fact, John, a couple weeks ago on this show, we talked about Jim Himes' response, and I know, Eric, we have a couple of tweets of his that he sent out right after the Orlando shooting, and when they were talking about holding a moment of silence, he said, "The moments of silence in the House have become an abomination. God will ask you, how did you keep my children safe? Silence." And we do have a couple of minutes of him speaking on the House floor about this issue, and then, John, we want to get your response to it. Can we, we're just going to roll that video right now.
Mr. Speaker, sometime today or tomorrow, this House will hold a moment of silence for 50 massacred Floridians who had their bodies torn apart by a madman with a military-grade weapon. Silence. That is how the leadership of the most powerful country in the world will respond to this week's massacre of its citizens. If this Congress had a single moral fiber, We would force ourselves to get to know the slaughtered innocents. We'd get to know Corey James Connell, 21 years old and a student at Valencia College. A child with dreams, cut short by a madman with a military rifle. And make no mistake, cut short by this Congress's fetish to repeatedly meet bloody tragedy with silence. Silence. That is what we offer in America that supports many of the things we could do to slow the bloodbath. Silence. Not me. Not anymore. I will no longer stand here absorbing the faux concern, contrived gravity, and tepid smugness of a House complicit in the weekly bloodshed. Sooner or later, the country will hold us accountable for our inaction. But as you bow your head and think of what you say to your God, when you are asked what you did to slow the slaughter of innocents, there will be silence.
So some powerful words there, and he mentions the moment of silence that you bring up in your op-ed. What's your response?
Well, it was in the op-ed. I mean, you know, he, like all of us, are understandably upset. I mean, it was a tragedy, an absolute tragedy. But, you know, not being silent now, it stands in crazy comparison to being silent on this topic for the last 8 years. I mean, he talks about the weekly bloodshed. The weekly bloodshed that is happening in this country, in our state, is the use of illegal handguns, mostly handguns, being trafficked across state lines. That's a federal job. That's something the federal government is supposed to have been dealing with for the last 30 years and hasn't been. That's a federal job. So talk about silence. Where's the bill in Congress by Jim or anybody else, frankly, from our Connecticut delegation to do something about it? There hasn't been a darn thing. So I understand the being upset now, but I'm upset that I've been screaming about this for 5 years up in Hartford and now here, and no one's done a damn thing. And we know where the main problem lies. This other stuff, the military-grade weapons, agreed. That's something we looked at in Connecticut. I think we can look at it again on a broader scope. It's got to be a federal and state examination of background checks and that kind of stuff. But let's not take our eye off the ball. The real issue is what's going on mostly in our cities. And by the illegal shipment of handguns across state lines, we know where they're coming from, we know where they're going, and we're not doing a damn thing about it. That's the silence that upsets me.
So what would a John Shaban bill look like that would actually stop the transfer of illegal handguns to Connecticut or other states?
First and foremost, you enforce the laws that exist, because the law is already against the law, but you got to fund it.
Right.
You have to fund it. And maybe you can amplify it, maybe you can have a joint state and federal task force. There's a lot of different models that can actually, but really what you got to do is enforce the laws that exist and fund the program. So we can pass every law, lots of policies, have a nice little speech, but when you defund stuff and you don't focus on it until it's too late, it's meaningless. It's histrionics, and that's the part that upsets me, because I've been talking about this for years.
Mm-hmm. Now, John, the majority of polls show that most Americans do support, increased background checks and in gun control, but there still seems to be this very clear party line in Congress. So, what's your feeling?
I don't know if listen, I vote the way John thinks. I vote with my heart, I vote with my head. If my party agrees with me or disagrees with me, I don't care. I'm going to vote to do what I think is right. Yeah, I supported enhanced background checks in Connecticut 3 years ago. I would support enhanced background checks in Congress now. It's a no-brainer. Like I say, I'm a gun owner and a hunter, and I'm in that community to some degree. And if it's going to take me an extra X number of days to buy something or do something, fine. That's okay. That's no big deal. And most of the gun owners that I know are fine with that. It's become politicized to a point where it's, again, a distraction from what the real problem is. So if we're going to have a problem, is it going to be a 3-day waiting period, a 5-day waiting period? Fine, we can have that discussion. But enhancing background checks is going to pass, should pass, and I'll support it. But if, again, we take our eye off the ball between the stuff that's not getting checked, the illegal trafficking of guns that are killing kids, or the central ingredient of the violence that we see every day, then we should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
And what about assault weapons? Where do you come on that?
Yeah, I think the real military-grade assault weapons have been illegal for 70 or 80 years. Yeah. So that's already illegal, and of course we can enhance enforcement of that. We did an assault weapons ban here in Connecticut, which I supported. And a lot of that was definitional stuff. What is an assault weapon? What's not an assault weapon? We'll have that conversation. I mean, the rationale that goes behind the assault weapons bans is that there's a distinction between a device that you hold on your shoulder and a device you hold on your hip. Now, there's some research out there that could go either way, but I was persuaded enough to say, we can and we should limit some of these weapons because the average citizen doesn't need a bazooka. I don't think the average citizen is entitled to a bazooka. Yeah. Some people disagree with you on that. Some people think the Second Amendment is absolute. I disagree with that. If the First Amendment's not absolute, the Second Amendment's not absolute. Right. And it goes through all the way down the line.
Fourth,
so, the fourth, the fifth. Forget about the 10th. We've been ignoring that for how many years? It's come back to life. So, and we can have that discussion, but John Shaban would support some kind of enhancement or reinstatement, because there used to be a federal assault weapons limitation. I'd support that, but it has to be done with the states. A lot of people, and this is actually the distinction between the way I think and guys like Himes think. The federal government doesn't own Connecticut. We are not a subsidiary of the federal government. So if the federal government passes a law, it does not ipso facto become enforceable all throughout Connecticut. It really depends on the construct of that law and what those, and what the federal authority is. That being said, we can work around that by working state and federal in a prompt, pragmatic fashion to address the problem. We can do assault weapon stuff, but we have to address illegal gun trafficking. Have to, because that's the main ingredient of gun violence, and we got to focus on that.
So now your view has a lot of nuances to it, right? But do you feel, though, that how the nation looks at this as a Republican or Democrat deal, there are no nuances, and does that hurt you in running in a state like this?
I don't know. Frankly, I don't view it as nuanced. I mean, I have a record.
Do you think the NRA would view it as nuanced, or?
I don't care what the NRA. I mean,
but
I don't care.
Okay, but you don't care. But the average resident of Connecticut who doesn't follow this on a day-to-day basis, like the three of us standing here, doesn't know. They think, Democrats are for gun control, Republicans are for.
Well, you have Donald Trump out there saying Hillary Clinton will take your guns away too.
Well, Mitt Romney said that about Barack Obama and John McCain 4 years earlier than that.
So there's not real nuance. It's John Shaban agrees that we need increased gun control. Done. End of sentence. Period. Stop. Yeah. John Shaban has a record to address this issue. Period. End of sentence. Stop. John Shaban has introduced bills to address the central ingredient in gun violence. End of sentence. Stop. There's no nuance there.
So is that going to be like a top part of your campaign? Because it hasn't been in the past for Republicans in Connecticut. Some say it hurt John McKinney in 2014 when he lost the Republican primary to Tom Foley for voting, in favor of limitations.
Yeah, I don't know if it hurt him or helped him. Definitely didn't help him. I don't know how much it hurt him. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, is it going to be? I'm not gearing my campaign to what I think is going to help or hurt me. I'm running for office because I think my approach to problem solving, my approach to governance, is more effective and will help more people faster and better than the way Jim Himes and Governor Malloy have been doing it. They're the opposite sides of the same coin. Send all the money, send all the authority to the government, centralize either in Hartford or in D.C., and we'll take care of all your problems. Well, it hasn't worked in 50 years, and it really hasn't worked in Connecticut in the last 10. Right. So, but my main thesis is let's get more authority, more resources, more money to a government that's limited and local, so we can solve our Connecticut problems in Connecticut with Connecticut dollars. Instead of giving $1, getting back 60 cents with an instruction book on how to spend your own money to fund schools, let's just keep the dollar and fund it the way we want. That's the main thesis. So outside of so that's what do you call it? Whether you call it federalism, whether you call it states' rights, or whether you just call it common sense, that's what I'm about. So there's other stuff that falls outside of that rubric or somewhat in parallel. I'm going to vote with my heart and my head, just like I've done in Hartford. Just like I've done in Hartford.
Now, John, it is an interesting election year.
Oh, yeah.
Donald Trump has thrown a lot of Republicans for a loop. They didn't expect it. What are you seeing out on the campaign trail?
Well, it's you see the first and second and third question often have his name in it somehow, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I wasn't a big Trump supporter to start with. I kind of like Chris Christie, and I was public about that. Where Trump was all shtick and Kasich was all substance. I thought Chris Christie had a nice combination of shtick and substance. But we are where we are. So a lot of people say, "What do you think of Trump? What do you think of Trump?" I said, if I'm down in Congress and I have a choice between working with someone who's a jerk or someone who I think is untrustworthy, I'll take the jerk every day. Yeah, I joke, I'm a lawyer. I do that every day. I can deal with it. I've got that. I'd rather have someone who is a little obnoxious, but their head and their heart are aimed in the right direction, although their mouth might not be, than an executive who I can't believe or trust what they say.
You find Trump trustworthy, though?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, I think his head and his heart are moving in the right direction. Whether he's trustworthy or not, I think so, but I don't know. I don't know the man personally. It's a little unusual because he has come from outside the political realm, so he doesn't have a political track record. He's got a business track record, which is bumpy. It's bumpy but successful. But that being said, so I got that issue on the campaign trail. I said, all right, fine, put that to the side. We govern from the bottom up, so people should vote from the bottom up. And this goes back to my earlier point. We govern limited and local and then work our way up. In the last 70, 80 years, we've allowed it to sort of get reversed. So people are looking at the top of the ticket and saying, well, if I don't like what's up there, it's going to affect the rest. Well, it may or may not, but you govern from the bottom up. The first and most important thing you vote for, school board. Right. The second and most important thing you vote for a selectman or mayor. And then you work your way up or down, depending on your perspective, to wherever it is. So that's what I've been hearing. That's what I've been saying. Some of the funding mechanisms on the Republican side are a little off skew because they're not quite sure what's going on yet, but it'll come into alignment. Yeah.
So, and you mentioned Dan Malloy earlier and compared him with Jim Himes. Now, we don't have a lot of polling about, you might, but we don't have public polling at least about Jim Himes and his popularity. We certainly know that Governor Malloy is, not been popular at all. If it's
he's taking a beating.
And one of the he's the least popular governor in the entire country right now on a state-by-state basis. And only Governor Rowland was slightly more unpopular just before he went to prison the first time.
Right.
I talked to some, a lot of off-the-record type conversations with some Republicans in the area, and most people say, hey, you know what? I mean, I don't agree completely with Jim Himes, but he's not a bad guy. He's not as awful as it seemed like it was going to be when he beat Shays in 08. How do you run against people who, they're kind of become complacent? He's our congressman now, and this is what he's now running for his 5th term.
Right. Well, listen, Jim Himes is not a bad guy. I've worked with him, chatted with him. He's a nice guy. He's a smart guy. I just think he's the wrong guy, and it's for many of the same reasons that I've just been talking about. Is he has either supported or sat by and watched as more and more of Connecticut resources get sucked to D.C. and we get less and less back. And I don't want to get more back. I want to keep more here. Right. But eventually, you got to sort of stem the tide. He was a big supporter of the Affordable Care Act, which has been a disaster in this state, and he keeps supporting it. He's been wrong on some big issues like the Iran deal. Wrong on that. He's kind of waffled back and forth on the Pacific trade deal. First supporting it, now he's kind of bobbing and weaving because I think he's reading the polls. I don't know. But the other stuff, he's been essentially, from my perspective, and especially being up in the State House, I see some of the other federal representatives up there trying to work federal and state, because guess what? It's all coming out of one pocket, ours. So if we're trying to manage our resources and manage our lives and manage our governance, we've got to work together. I have never seen Jim. I see Dick Blumenthal all the time. I see Larson.
Everyone sees Dick Blumenthal.
Well, I know. I open up my garage door very well.
What?
Dick, what are you doing there? But you also hear from these guys.
Right.
Again, he's a nice guy, but he's sort of a done nothing, do nothing congressman. Now, he's for the last 8 years, he's been more or less running behind the blocking and tackling of President Obama. And whether you like the president or don't, everyone should admit and must admit he's a charismatic guy. He's a likable guy. He's a smart man. So he's kind of had that blocking and tackling in front of him. But now, the mood in Connecticut is such, and it has to be that it's like, I have normal people. I always say we're not normal.
Yeah, right.
Sorry to admit
no,
the three of us are not.
Yeah.
The guy back there, not normal. We
Yeah.
are not normal. We drill down on these issues and stuff. But normal folks, friends of mine, or folks at the lunch counter, are actually asking questions. What is going on in Hartford? What is going on in our state? What's going on in D.C.? They're asking these questions because they see jobs leaving, opportunities leaving. Our schools are getting cut. We're the wealthiest state per capita in the country, but yet we're number 49 and 50 in every economic metric. Every one of them. I think Puerto Rico may jump us. We may actually go to 51, which is amazing in a 50-state union. So normal people are finally saying, we got to make a change. So even though Jim may be a nice guy, and he's definitely a smart guy, he's the wrong guy. He hasn't done anything. He has done nothing to return resources or manage resources here in Fairfield County. We have failing schools in Fairfield County. Failing schools. How is that possible? We mismanage our resources. And he's part of the problem.
Well, John, I'm sure we'll talk with you again while you're out on the campaign trail.
You'll see me.
We'll see you, and we so appreciate you coming by today.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right,
Thanks, John.
State
Good luck.
Representative John Shaban. We're going to step out for a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking transportation, and we have a few news stories that we're following today. Coming up on CT Pulse after this. Have a sports injury or a slip and fall that needs immediate care? Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care gives you direct access to an orthopedic specialist fast, without an appointment. Biking, golf, tennis, soccer, whatever the sports injury is, sprain or fracture, Coastal Ortho Express can help. Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care, open Monday through Saturday, now in 2 locations. The iPark building at 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk and 36 Old Kings Highway South in Darien. Or go to coastalorthoexpress.com, like them on Facebook.
Warm weather, light breezes, boats are in the water. There's no better place to celebrate summer than the Dock Shop. Whether in Darien at 51 Tokenique Road or Westport at 609 Riverside Avenue, the Dock Shop is where you'll find everything you need to kick off summer. From the latest summer apparel to the newest fishing tackle, the Dock Shop will help you get the most out of your next beach day or harbor cruise. At the Dock Shop, you'll find a wonderful selection of items made in the USA and right here in New England, all with a distinct nautical flair. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the coastal lifestyle, this is a unique place to shop. DockShop.com.
For more than 50 years, Triple S has been Fairfield County's expert service for carpet, upholstery, and drapery cleaning. We provide the best in repairs and in-depth restoration, understanding fabrics and how to properly clean and restore them. Our staff will come to your home to clean your wall-to-wall carpet to perfection. We can also pick up your fine carpets and bring them to our facilities. With locations in Norwalk, Stamford, and Stratford, Triple S will get the job done fast, big or small. At Triple S, you can count on our people as well as our cleaning. Find us at triplesclean.com or 203-847-8000.
I'm John Kovach. I'm a newspaper editor. I'm a high school football coach. I'm a television presenter. And I want you to love fishing as much as I do. Tune in to Yankee Fisherman, Thursdays at 1 on the HAN network. It's like going to the tackle shop without leaving your office.
"16 years ago, a group of regular commuters on Amtrak's early morning train to Washington had a great idea. I'm Jim Cameron for Talking Transportation, commentary and analysis on getting around in the Northeast. That great idea those commuters had was, why not designate one car on that train as a quiet car, free from cell phone chatter and loud conversations? The railroad agreed, and the experiment proved to be a great success. But as early as 2006, when the same idea was suggested to Metro North, it was rejected outright. Impossible, they said. Well, I was serving then on the Commuter Council, and I persisted. And 5 years later, in 2011, the railroad finally agreed to a trial with one quiet car on each rush hour train, dedicated to what they euphemistically called a quiet, calm mute. Almost immediately, the plan ran into trouble. Not because it wasn't a great idea, but because the rules were not enforced. There were no signs in the cars, and only rare public address announcements reminding folks who sat in the car that it required a quiet, library-like environment. Most of all, the conductors were not enforcing the new rules. But why? Conductors seem to have no troubles reminding folks about keeping their feet off the seats or putting their luggage in the overhead racks, enforcing the no smoking rules. But all the railroad expected the conductors to do to enforce the quiet car rules was to pass out bilingual shush cards reminding Gabby violators that they're supposed to be quiet. It seemed left to the passengers to remind fellow riders what a quiet car was, and as a result, there were many confrontations. Then this spring, the railroad surprised even me by announcing an expansion of the program. Every weekday train, peak and off-peak, would now have 2 quiet cars. Sounds great, but without signage or education, the battles continue. One commuter from Fairfield recently emailed me with a typical tale. He said he was riding in the quiet car when he became annoyed when a fellow passenger was yakking on her cell phone. So he tapped her on the shoulder and told her quietly, "We're in a quiet car." And she freaked out, telling him, "Keep your effing hands off of me," and continuing her chatter by telling her caller on the phone that some guy just tried to tell me to get off my phone and what a fool he is because he thinks we're in some sort of a quiet car. Of course, there was no conductor around, all tickets having been collected, and lacking any signage even in the car that he could point to, the offended passenger was made to feel like some kind of a jerk. On Amtrak trains, those violating quiet car rules have even been thrown off the train and arrested. Even Chris Christie had to move his seat on an Acela once for yabbering with his staff in the wrong car. Nobody wants these kind of altercations on Metro North. But why initiate and then expand such a program amenity as the quiet car without proper education and enforcement? A few signs and friendly reminders from conductors should make passengers aware that train time may be your own time, as the railroad's old marketing slogan says, but it's also shared time. And I, for one, would like a quiet commute. I'm Jim Cameron for Talking Transportation.
Thanks, Jim. That was a look at the quiet car. Kate, you ever been on a quiet car?
I have not been on a quiet car. That would be a bad place for me. That would be the wrong place for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so that was nice. You put that together thanks to Jim Cameron, and great job.
Yeah. So
we're going to be showing Talking Transportation every Wednesday on CT Pulse.
Every Wednesday. We're adding it to the this growing parade of information
that we give you right here.
You during your lunch break on
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays.
That's right. All right, well, just a couple stories that I'm following today, Josh. One that was just posted on the Weston Forum. The Weston property where the remains of Jeffrey and Jeanette Navin were found is now on the market for $1.38 million. That's located at 89 Northfield Road. The house is currently owned by Sturgis Brothers, Inc., which is a big area developer. They are a Ridgefield-based construction company. Sturgis Brothers bought the 4-bedroom, 4,200 square foot home from Thomas Kerrigan of Westport in February for $600,000. Last October, while he was doing yard work at the house, Kerrigan discovered the bodies of Jeffrey Navin, 56, and his wife, Jeanette, 55, underneath a tarp. Their son, Kyle Navin, and his girlfriend, Jennifer Valiente, have been charged in connection with their murders and are awaiting trial. Obviously, grisly discovery. It's got to be a hard house to sell.
Yeah, and you saw we put two photos there, and one is before the renovations with it, which is a house that's kind of right in the center of Weston, and I know I've been by it a number of times, and it does look really nice since
it's a beautiful home.
Since the remodeling's been done. I thought there'd be more of a murder discount, though, Kate.
I mean, they have to disclose. I don't think in Connecticut there's a law about disclosing something like that when you buy a home. I know there are in certain other states, but if somebody Googles that property, that story is going to come up. So
I wonder what the going rate for murder discounts is in Connecticut. Is it like that'd be a great bill for the the General Assembly to pass?
All right, you talk to your representative about that.
John Shaban when he was here.
All right, so just an interesting story there, that we're going to follow. Is a beautiful home in a beautiful town, but just a terrible recent history behind it. Something a bit more fun that happened this week. There was an alligator scare in Connecticut. The body of an alligator was found in the Connecticut River on Sunday, but as it turns out, that alligator was a fake. The Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection were called in to investigate, and on Monday they sent the media, including myself, an email that read, "State Environmental Conservation Police responded this morning to a report of a dead alligator in the Connecticut River north of Hartford. The result of that investigation is that the alligator was stuffed." Short and sweet and simple and to the point. Yeah. Now, but the question we had...
You've had an alligator right here on this table before, haven't you?
That's right, we did. Yeah. A special visitor, but he wasn't from Connecticut.
Or a river in Connecticut?
Or a river in Connecticut, which would be very scary. But we have heard from the Beardsley Zoo that sometimes people get pet alligators and they release them into the wild, and then those alligators die because they're not meant to survive in Connecticut's climate. But I'm sure a lot of people were freaked out when they saw that washed up on shore. My question is, though, does stuffed mean that it's like a stuffed animal, or does it mean that it was once an alligator? And it's like a taxidermied alligator, so it's like just super dead.
Or maybe it's like stuff with like crab, with some crab meat and like some Ritz crackers, and you wear a big bib when you eat it.
So just an interesting little unusual Connecticut news story there, Josh. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Doug Smith is going to join us. We're going to be talking July 4th, mishaps and fun, coming up after this.
Walter Stewart's Market in New Canaan is your time-saving local shopping destination for the best of spring. Find many of your favorite products, from great specials on everyday items to the freshest organic produce, artisanal cheeses, and grass-fed steaks. Drop off your knives to be sharpened, grab a beautiful bouquet of spring flowers, and stop in next door for a wine tasting. Plus, their personable staff is always ready to lend a helping hand. So stop in to Walter Stewart's Market, 229 Elm Street today, or shop online at stewartsmarket.com.
Mosquitoes, ticks, gone. Guaranteed. That's what Mosquito Squad guarantees as America's most trusted mosquito and tick control company. Locally owned and operated, over 90,000 homes have been protected by Mosquito Squad using their dual protection method for season-long protection, which includes barrier spray service for eliminating mosquitoes and adult ticks, as well as supplemental programs to increase tick control. They use only USDA organic options, which are safe and non-toxic. Contact them today at www.squadctny.com or 203-893-4309. Mosquito Squad. No bugs, no bites, no kidding.
When it comes to local entertainment, we've got it all.
From movies, local artists, etiquette, and more.
Watch HAN Arts and Leisure every Thursday at 2 on the HAN Network.
I'm Denise DiGregoli, the host of The Drive on the HAN Network. Join me Tuesdays for some motivational, intelligent talk with a little humor as we visit with people who live their lives mindfully. Tune in to The Drive live on Tuesdays, 12:30, here on the HAN Network.
I'm Kate Czaplinski. Join us for Coffee Break, weekdays at 11 to get the latest Connecticut news, weather, high school sports, and more. News doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break on the HAN Network.
You're watching the HAN Network, and you're not alone. Nearly 1 million people have watched our live sports, news, and entertainment programming since the network launched in August 2015. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Advertising Director Jessica Murrin at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
Everybody run, there's an M80 in Doug Smith's mailbox.
No, the M80 has the fuse on the side. I think that's
okay.
I think that's dynamite.
Well, it's time to talk drawing some conclusions with Doug Smith. And since we're coming up on the long July 4th weekend, we have plenty of fireworks humor to discuss. So let's get right into it. Tell us about this one.
Oh, that was just one of those roadside stands that pop up every 4th of July.
It's a little creepy, right? I used to be an international arms dealer, but then I got downsized.
Yep.
It is a little strange. You always feel a bit weird buying fireworks.
They don't even have good fireworks.
I know.
Well,
it's all just,
legally they can't, yeah.
Right, you can't get the explosive
You got to
stuff.
go to New Hampshire or
south of the border or something.
All right, next up.
Here's a patriotic one, but...
Oh, that's nice. What a display. How do you like those colors? I never get tired of looking at them at the flag. That's a very nice one. Very nice one. All right, up next. You love drawing this with the little fuse. Is that the M80?
That's the M80,
okay.
yep.
The big M80.
You idiots. They were supposed to get M8 cars, not M80.
Not really a 4th of July one, but that was about Metro North a few years ago, getting the new train cars on there, and just did some fun with the M8, M80. And
Doug seems to know a lot about explosives.
I know.
You're worried.
Quiet.
He does.
Okay, can you start my car for me?
Okay, I love this one because the little fireworks look so cute. It says, have a happy and safe July 4th, and the police officer saying, let's let's keep an eye on those characters
Yep.
over there. And tell us about this one.
Oh, that was Massac High School. They had a drone last summer,
Oh.
and they were flying it around, and it just happened to be right on the 4th of July.
So you joked that maybe there could have been some kind of firework accident. Let's hope that doesn't happen to the HAN drone.
Yeah.
All right.
This was in New Canaan a few years back. They were talking about Yankee Gas was going to be bringing the gas line through Wavenly Park.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it fell right on the 4th of July, so I said, what are the chances?
Or maybe that happening on
There'd be
purpose.
some real pyrotechnics there.
Yes.
I can assure
Piloted
you.
by someone from Darien.
Okay,
And
we
that's-
call this one the Stratford Cat Projectile.
Yep, and the Stratford Cat Project is an organization in Stratford that rescues the cats. So we had some fun. They really love that cartoon. I sent it to them.
Very cute. I love that. And tell us about this one. Oh.
Just a poor joke.
I like it. A Roman candle. Look at
We
that.
got Augustus Caesar there as a blockbuster bomb, just walking along in his toga.
All right. And
And
finally,
at the
that's
end-
you again.
That's me again. That's because I'm losing the meaning of the 4th of July, Independence Day, and just making it about explosives and not about what it really stands for. So Uncle Sam's a little bit.
Uncle Sam
peeved
is
at
lighting
me.
you up.
Exactly.
I get it.
Well, you
All
can say
right.
that Declaration of Independence was quite explosive.
Exactly.
Right. All right. Well, Doug, thanks as always. Hope you have a
Okay.
great
You
July
too.
4th weekend.
Thank you.
All right, Josh.
Where are you watching the fireworks, Kate?
I don't know yet.
Sorry.
We'll find
everybody.
out. There's so many displays to choose from. You can find the whole list at han.network. I'm going to post it there in just a little bit. But anyway, we are going to wrap things up here on CT Pulse. It's been fun.
It has.
It's been real.
It's been great. So nice to see you again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will see you guys next Wednesday. Of course, today on the HAN Network, be sure to check out Nutmeg Sports at 2 o'clock. Rob Adams' last Nutmeg Sports with us here, but we're going to talk more about that on Coffee Break later this week. But watch Nutmeg Sports.
Good luck, Rob.
All right. We'll see you next time.